traditional buffalo to sweet barbecue to the hottest of the hot, Tokyo Dragon or Mango Fire. They even have dry rub flavors you're bound to enjoy. Tenders, fried shrimp, burgers, salad. The menu has it all, and everything can be infused with your favorite wing sauce. That's the Wing Zone, 520 Mills Avenue in Greenville. Order online at wingzone.com.
It is 10:42, and we are back. It's the final segment of the show. Streaming live here on Facebook. It is a busy, busy day on college campuses all around the country, and here at Furman is no exception. And, well, this guy was, as I told him when he came up, he was on our hit list to get upstairs to talk to anyway. So maybe divine intervention. George Quarles, who is part of the new coaching staff here. Let's see, is it associate head coach and tight ends? Is that right? Let me turn your microphone up. That'll probably help.
Yes.
Good to have you with us, man. How you doing?
Great. Good to be here.
I got to ask you before we even start talking about what I know is an exciting day here on signing day. All the years and all the success you had at Maryville in Tennessee, and I think, since 99, you had more state championships than losses. So that's pretty good. And anybody who's had that kind of success has had overtures and have had opportunities to leave. Why was this the right time for you to make a move?
You know, you mentioned divine intervention. That may have had something to do with it. And I think the opportunity to work with Clay. Clay and I were roommates for a little while when I was a GA here. And we had talked about it a number of times. You know, whether I got a job, he got a job, you know, if we had the chance to work together, we wanted to try that. And, you know, it felt like time. You know, I'd been at Maryville. This was my 22nd season being on the staff, 18th as head coach. And it felt like it was time to try something else, a new adventure. And then when Clay got this job, he called, and it didn't take very long to decide to want to do this, plus to get to come back to Furman, you know, a place I love. And we loved Greenville. We left Greenville to go to Maryville in 1995. So it's, you know, big circle there.
Yeah, and I think it was Brian Bratton who maybe tweeted out one of those old grainy black and white photos from back in the day of a young wide receiver celebrating at a playoff game at Marshall, right?
Right, that was right. Back in '88, I think we were in the quarterfinals, and you know, they had beaten us up there back during the regular season. We had a tough day offensively. We turned it over a bunch of times that first game, and then went back up there and got some redemption. And you know, we were just a different team at that point. Frankie was playing much better, Frankie DeBusk, of course, and you know, our defense was incredible that year. And on offense, we just tried not to lose it. And to make a big play in that setting was definitely the highlight of my career.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I love seeing that picture. And of course, you were playing then, I think, still at Old Fairfield Stadium, right?
Yes, that was the old stadium.
The hockey rink, the high walls.
That's right. They were on top of you. It was, you know, it was really a fun place to play. The fans weren't very nice, and but it was, you know, you knew it was our team against a whole lot of people. And like I said, that was a great win.
If you're a competitor, you
yeah.
thrive on that.
That's what you want. And you know, I told our kids at Maryville all the time, that's what we want. We want to go into the to the rough areas and win and be competitive.
Well, you made the decision to come here. Have you had a chance to get settled, I guess, is the next thing?
No. We're all, you know, right now most of us are bachelors. My family's still in Maryville, and they'll stay there till after school is out. I have a sixth grader who's on the baseball team, and he wants to do that, and we want him to. And I think several of the other coaches are going to be doing the same thing. So I got some in-laws in Anderson in the upstate here, so I can stay with them. I've stayed at Coach Hendricks some in one of our donors' guest houses. So we've been able to do that. We've got some staying in apartments. So we're all kind of spread out right now, but I would say it'll be June before we actually get settled.
So thank God for a good relationship with the in-laws, right?
Absolutely. They've been great.
That's fantastic. All right, well, let's get to the business at hand. Clay sat in that chair 3 or 4 weeks ago. and we're talking about, everything with him coming here, but talked about specifically trying to put together a recruiting class under these circumstances. Anytime there's a coaching change, it is chaos. It's very difficult. And he told me, he said, we will not offer a scholarship to somebody just to have a warm body, that if we don't get the right fit, we'll hold a scholarship over to next year, because you don't want to be handicapped
Sure.
at that spot for 4 years. And then I hear you guys are expecting, if all goes well, as many as 18 in your class this year. So taking Clay at his word, that must mean that you guys have made a lot of progress and a lot of headway in a very short period of time.
I don't think there's any question. Coach Hendricks put together a great staff, and obviously I'm new to the recruiting part of it, but we were able to get in on a lot of good players. Some of them we couldn't get to campus. Some of them we couldn't get committed or signed. But I think the ones that we're going to sign are going to help us. There will be, I think, a handful that will play pretty early next year. There will be hopefully a handful of them that you get to redshirt. I think that's the key in building the program, is being able to get them bigger, let them redshirt, then have 4 years of playing and starting. But I don't think we took anybody that we don't think can help us, within a year or two.
Well, that's got to be fantastic for Furman fans to hear, because we know what the history of this football program is. We know how strong this Furman football program can be. And then, quite honestly, we also know that over the last decade or so, there's been a great deal of apathy set in
Sure.
among the fan base here. And that's something else that this new coaching staff has to overcome. You've got to put a product out there that excites the fan base again. And if you can get that kind of class, and we don't know how they're going to pan
Sure.
out. You never know.
Everybody's happy today.
These recruiting rankings drive me crazy.
Absolutely.
I have this crazy philosophy, George, that you can't judge a recruiting class until after their careers are done.
No question.
Yeah, go figure, right? But if you can generate a class that appears to be this good with basically a month and a half of a staff, that's got to bode well for the future.
Like I said, and we have some nice recruiters who have done it well. Clay is a great recruiter. He recruited in Georgia from Air Force, 2,000 miles away, and he would typically sign 15 to 18 kids a year to Air Force. Obviously we only, and they had unlimited scholarships, but he could convince people to move all the way to Colorado, and he's done a great job, and our staff has done a great job. Brian Bratton and Dwayne Vaughn kind of held it together, during the transition time between the two staffs. And not only did we identify some really good players who, for whatever reason, maybe they were dropped by another team or just had been overlooked, we were able to identify those, get in their homes, get them to campus, and get them signed. And I think, like I said, I really think these are kids that are Furman-type players, the ones that I remember back in, the late 80s, early 90s that we had, who were not only good players, they're good students, good kids, good people, the kind of guys you want in your home, that kind of stuff. And like I said, I think we can generate some excitement because there's a great product to sell here at Furman. You got unbelievable campus, unbelievable facilities, best city in the Southern Conference by far. I mean, Greenville is by far the best city in the Southern Conference.
No argument there.
We have a lot of things to sell here, and we just got to win some games, and they've been close. It's not like Furman's been awful or anything like that. Won the Southern Conference a few years ago, and I think that, what Coach Hendricks is doing, and what we're trying to do as a staff, I think it'll translate into some wins.
Georgia, at this level, I would think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but at this level, I would think that coaches don't have to deal with what the Dabo Sweeneys and Nick Sabans of the world have to deal with, and that is a lot of deprogramming kids once you've got them signed and get them onto campus in the fall. At that upper level, they've been wined and dined
Sure.
and go on all these official visits. And as we were talking about yesterday, there are actually schools that have had to hire sports psychologists
Right.
to deprogram some of these kids now that they're in the quote-unquote real world of college football. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine at our level that's not nearly the concern as it is at that level.
And I think if anything, it's the other way. We can play with a little bit of a chip on our shoulder that, hey, those big guys didn't recruit you. You need to go prove that they made a mistake.
Yeah.
Because I'm typically at our level, there's an inch difference. Instead of being 6'1", the kid's 6 feet. Instead of being 6'4", he's 6'3". That kind of stuff, which, and being on the other side of it, being a high school coach, I witnessed that for years. Coach, he's just a little bit too short or maybe a step slow, that kind of stuff. And I think all the guys we've gotten, you compare them against some of the big timers, if you put tape side by side, there's not a whole lot of difference. They're all making plays. And that was the other thing Coach Hendricks really wanted to do. We were not going to worry about, hey, we got too many defensive players or we got too many of this or that. If they were football players, we wanted to get good players. We weren't going to pass up on a good player just because we felt like we were too full in certain spots. And we went after, like you said, looking at our list, we've got quite a few more defensive players on this list than we do offensive players. But the one common denominator, when you put on their tape, they're making plays. And that's what it's about. You can be, maybe an inch short or you're 40 times a half a tenth slower. But if you're making plays, that's going to help us win games here at Furman.
Well, you're also going against athletes who are in similar situations
Sure.
in this conference. And so from that standpoint, the playing field is fairly level. You mentioned the emphasis on defense. Obviously, that was part of the plan going in, as you and I talked during the break when you got in here. You're going into spring practice with what, 2 safeties
Right.
on the roster right now. So obviously, there has to be some focus on defense. I know we lost 2 starting corners. We lost a couple of linebackers, including one of the best that's ever played
Sure.
here. So there are some holes that have to be filled.
Right. And new staff, new scheme, defensively. So you kind of have to recruit just a little bit differently, I think, than they've been recruiting before. But in the back end back there, I think we've got, well, I can say both corners, their stuff's come in. So I can talk about them. We took 2 corners this year. We'll end up with some safeties that will help, I think, just from a depth standpoint. And like I said, going into spring, it's going to be really hard to come up with a 2 deep. And we're going to have to be careful in the spring, not to beat people up. At the same time, we've got to develop a toughness, that I think only you get in spring practice. And that's what Coach Hendricks is about. We're going to, he talked about it in the first team meeting. We're going to do things the right way, and we're going to be tough. And whether it's in the weight room, whether it's in the classroom, definitely on the football field, we're going to play tough. We're going to have a physical mindset, and but we got to be careful, in spring practice, not to be so tough that we don't have any players left for the fall.
George, with you coming from Tennessee and after obviously have been here, and Clay, of course, was here. He went out to the Air Force, so he's been out in Colorado, and Drew's been down in Georgia. So there's obviously the normal imprint that Furman would recruit from, but with where Clay has been, where you've been, has that, or will that in the future, will that recruiting footprint widen?
I think we're going to spend most of our time in Georgia. We just got to. There's too many good players there. There's good schools, good, private schools. That Atlanta area has always been good for Furman. I think you got to get players out of South Carolina, of course. Mm-hmm. I don't see it changing a whole lot. We may go try to get into Ohio a little bit. We've got a couple of kids on the team now, I think from Cincinnati. I think that's a a place where you can go and it's not too terribly far for the parents to drive. And,
so it's only the greatest city in the world.
That's
by the way.
right. There you go. But, I don't see us going, much further west than maybe Nashville, and Birmingham, that kind of area. We'll go to Jacksonville and Tampa, I think. But, good players, are good players, and we'll go wherever we need to. But I think there's enough in the areas that we've gone typically. We just got to do a good job of coaching them and, like I said, making them tougher and getting everybody on the same page.
When we get to spring practice and you start unveiling whatever this offense is,
the hybrid
for the first time, that's what Brian
Yeah.
Bratton said. He threw that name out there.
Sure.
As the hybrid. Once fall rolls around, you think the fans are going to be excited by what they see?
I do. It is really going to be a hybrid. We've got to, and I don't think we're going to truly know what the offense is going to look like until after spring, because we've watched film a little bit of the guys who are currently on the roster, but until we get out there with them, I don't think you truly know what all those guys can do. I do know that we're going to be under center some, and we're going to run the fullback some. Coach Hendricks has talked about that a whole lot. The linemen will have their hand on the ground quite a bit. Their fullback will have his hand on the ground, either carrying the ball or going to block somebody. So I just think there'll be a physicalness that is needed in college football. Coach Hendricks and Air Force proved that you can win, with maybe a little smaller player that is smart and tough and disciplined, and that's the kind of kids we want to get here at Furman. And they're not going to be smaller necessarily, and we're going to be athletic. You add that with the fact that they are going to be tough and disciplined and know what to do. I just think fans will enjoy watching us play. Mix that in with, play action pass, and we've got athletic quarterbacks already on staff. I really think, the fans will be excited about what they see.
The hybrid coming soon to a stadium near you, right?
Yeah, and who knows? It's going to be a little bit of Auburn, a little bit of Air Force stuff, maybe some of the stuff we were doing at Maryville. So I think.
Brian told me up here last week that you guys have been sitting around in the room and just throwing ideas.
It really has. And the last few days, since Sunday, we sent our last recruits home Sunday about lunchtime, and we worked till about 6:30 that night, just throwing out ideas. We were back Monday morning at 7, throwing out ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And Coach Hendricks, I think, knows what he wants to do, and Coach Cronick has a good idea what he was doing at Reinhardt. We just got to mesh all those things together, and that's been fun. It's been educational. Mm-hmm. But we've got to be able to teach it to our kids and put it in a way that they understand it.
Anytime, and we'll let you go after this because we're coming to the end, but anytime there's a coaching change, there's obviously a new enthusiasm around the program. But being in this building like I am on a daily basis, even just walking through the lobby to get the elevator upstairs to the booth, the excitement level that seems to be here among the staff, not just among the fans because of the change, but the enthusiasm level among the staff seems to be really off the charts. You guys really believe that there's something special brewing here, don't you?
I don't think there's any question. And, Coach Hendricks, when he was putting together a staff, he wanted winners and guys who had been part of winning programs. And everybody we've hired, they've come from programs that were winning. And I think everybody on our staff, we expect to win. Our kids, you watch them in the weight room, we watch them running. We've got great kids here who will cough up a lung, if that's what we ask them to do, if it means giving us a chance to win. And I don't think you can, make too big a deal about that. Those kids, they want to win. I know our coaches do, and I'm excited. I'm telling you, I can't wait for the season to start. Can't wait to get through spring practice and see what all we can do. But I just really think there is something special. I think Clay is the right person for this job, and You know, just the excitement that he's generated from former players. I've talked to all kinds of players that played when I was here. I've met with some of them in that FFPA group,
right?
You know, a couple of Saturdays ago, and I know they're excited. So I just really think this is going to be something pretty special.
All right, tonight at the American Burger Company downtown is at
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Will you be among the coaches?
Yeah,
there?
I think the whole staff is going to be there.
Be there to kind of unveil and talk about, maybe show some video of this recruiting class. And I know you're still waiting on, can't mention names of kids who aren't in yet, still waiting on a couple that you expect. And if everybody comes in, we'll have, what, 18?
18. If we get everybody in, it'll be 18. And like I said, they're 18 that can help us, you know, pretty quick. And like I said, we're excited about it, but I know every staff's excited how well we develop them and how well they but they all say the same thing. They're excited about helping Furman win. Said the wrong team there.
Well, see, now you see, I spent 7 years, actually 11 years on the air, but 7 years working with the Clemson Network.
Sure.
And now I come over here. I'm in 6th year at Furman, and every so often
I knew I was going to do it. I did it on my first interview.
Every so often that Clemson word will still sneak in. That's not as bad as Maryville's not nearly as bad as saying Clemson. So don't worry about it. But you know, I was laughing with my previous guest. There's never been a National Signing Day press conference in the history of National Signing Days where a coach stood up and said, well, you know, we really didn't get what we wanted.
Yeah, we got a bunch of bad players in here.
That never happens.
Everybody's excited. Everybody's, you know, we want to find out, hey, how well we evaluate kids and do we get the right ones? And like you said, we won't know that for about 3 or 4 years.
Sounds good. George, thank you, man.
Thank you, Dan.
That's George Quarles. That is going to wrap up today's show. Back with you tomorrow. Same time and same place. Billy Davis will join us, the former Clemson standout and former U.S. Secret Service agent, to give us a couple more of his recruiting stories from back when he was the #1 recruit out of the state of Virginia. That and more on the show tomorrow. This interview will be available on my social media and Furman social media in less than an hour. Until tomorrow, I'm Dan Scott saying God bless you, and so long, everybody.